What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another live Q&A episode of this Pack-A-Day podcast on day 2 of the NFL draft. Obviously, the Packers selected Lucas Van Ness on day 1, which I'm excited to talk about, but I'm going to mostly keep this a Q&A. I had a immediate reaction up to Lucas Van Ness as well as an episode this morning. So if you want a little bit more of a breakdown on those, you can certainly check those out. Obviously, I'm going to be doing like the complete deep dives as well coming up. So you can keep an eye out for that. I watched tape on Lucas Van Ness all today. So that's what I've been basically doing, watching the all 22. I watched 4.5 games already. I'm up to the Ohio State game this year. Him going against DeJuan Jones and Paris Johnson. So that was really fun. But yeah, I'm really excited to just be able to talk with you guys again. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for all of the support over the last couple of days. Yesterday's live chat was awesome. A lot of views on the YouTube channel, a lot of likes, a lot of comments. So really appreciate you guys. I know it is a really fun time of year, but I know there's a lot of there's just a lot that goes into it, right? Everyone has their opinions. Everyone has their takes. Everyone has certain players that they want. Everyone's super invested. This is the future of the Green Bay Packers. So I know this is super hot take season and everyone is either super excited or super upset. And I think we just have to step back and remember that, like, in a variety of ways, some of these players are going to help in year one. Some of them are going to take a little bit longer. You go back to last year, right? We were all immediately excited about certain players and what they were going to be able to do in year one. And Quay Walker had his ups and downs. Devontae Wyatt hardly played. And when he did play, he had some really nice flashes, but he hardly played. Then you get Christian Watson, who has some injuries, but then has a major breakout midseason. Romeo Doubs looks like he's going to be a long-term starter immediately, and then goes through some injuries and kind of some ups and downs the remainder of the season. Zach Tom looks like he could be a long-term starter, but he's going to have to find his long-term position. Kingsley, JJ, and Igbari looks like he's going to be a rotational player for a while. Sean Ryan, a lot of people really excited about Sean Ryan. He was terrible in camp and couldn't do anything and then got suspended. So, like, we all have these immediate gut reactions of what's going to happen with all of these players, and we just have to let it play out. Even guys like Sean Ryan, we have no idea. He could end up being still a long-term starter for Green Bay. There's a lot of time left for his career. Somebody that we thought was going to be really good day one, Romeo Doubs, still has a lot to prove. Eric Stokes, 2 years ago, who started and looked like a sound corner, that he was going to just be probably a decade-long corner opposite Jair Alexander. First year, really, really good. Some ups and downs, certainly, but a really nice first year. And then he comes back in his second year, doesn't look anywhere near the same, and then gets a major injury and now may be gone to start this season as well. So you just don't know how these players are going to progress. And we're going to go through, obviously, all of them and take deep dives. But I think the best way you can look at any of these players that Green Bay takes on day 1, day 2, day 3 is – what can they potentially bring to the table? What are their positives? What are their negatives? What's the potential outlook? What's the ceiling? What's the floor? And just what type of player are you getting? And that's what I think the best analysts will try to break down. It's not going to tell you, hey, this guy's the best player in the world, or no, this guy's terrible, he's going to be a bust. Nobody knows. That's what makes the NFL draft so intriguing. And that's what's going to make all of these players so much fun to kind of keep an eye on as time goes on. All right, that's my diatribe to begin. Let's get to some questions right away. Judy, thanks so much again. Really appreciate you yesterday and today coming in strong with this. This is awesome. Do you think Goody got LVN confused with JSN? I trust the pick. Go Pack, go. He did not. I know you're joking, but I think let's talk about that, because I know that's sort of the elephant in the room is, all right, should they have taken JSN? Should they have taken LVN? Green Bay has a type. They have a process. They have a procedure. You can disagree with that process and procedure. I get it. I understand it. It's not always the most fun. They've taken a crap ton of defensive players with premium picks and haven't had a good defense to show for it. Is that poor evaluation or is that poor coaching? Probably a little bit of both here and there, but I think something has to give at some point. I don't think you can continue to go on and say, we're going to keep investing a ton into our defense and keep having a bottom half of the league defense. That doesn't add up, right? So at some point, there's going to have to be a reconciliation between, management, or I should say like the roster management and the coaching to figure out what the disconnect is. And really, we're well past that time, right? But at the same token, Green Bay very much has a type that they look for. I've talked about it over and over ad nauseum over the last, probably years at this point, but they love premium position players. And I know people keep looking at it and be like, well, how do they keep ending up with defensive players then? Well, the premium positions and wide receiver, I think, again, is probably a part of that. But it's a little bit debatable if Green Bay thinks that it is at this point. But you look at premium positions: quarterback, offensive tackle, defensive lineman, edge, corner are really the main ones. Defensive line, edge, corner, offensive tackle, and quarterback. Well, Green Bay's had Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre for 30 years. And specifically, while Ted Thompson's been here, they've had Aaron Rodgers the entire time, save for when they drafted Aaron Rodgers, right? So they haven't needed a quarterback, and when they did, or at least it started to get ready to need one, they took Jordan Love right away. So that hasn't been a need. So that leaves you at premium positions with defensive line, edge, corner, and then at offensive tackle. So you've got inherently 3 of the 4 positions left are defense. And that's just what they ultimately value. And if you look at the league as a whole, this year in this draft, I think it was 28 out of the 32 picks were premium positions if you include wide receiver, edge, quarterback, defensive lineman, cornerback, and then offensive tackle. 28 of the 32 picks. This is very common at this point. A couple running backs go, Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson, an off-ball linebacker. In fact, the Lions took 2 of the 4 players that were not those premium positions. So again, Green Bay likes what they like. They love premium position players. A lot of those are on defense. They love extreme athletes. They love younger players that have the opportunity to develop. And that's why Lucas Van Ness was such an easy prediction for me, because he just screamed off the page of everything Green Bay Packer that they usually like to go with. All right. Andre Samea, let's get that punter on in round 2. Let's go. That would probably be the one thing that would be a little bit surprising at this point. But Rich Bisaccia has been in charge basically this entire offseason, so you never quite know. But I appreciate that a ton, Andreas. Thanks so much. Ryan, chances that we get Hyde in Washington. I love those 2. Also, absolutely love the podcast. You're the absolute goat, Andy. Not sure about that, but I appreciate it. And Goody, we trust. Go Pack, go. All right, so let's talk about those 2 really fun players to talk about. Washington, when I did my top 25 episode of the 25 most likely players to be Green Bay Packers in this draft, my number 1, my only first-round guy that I put on the list, I guess technically Jack Campbell ended up in the first round, but I thought of him more as a second-round pick at the time. But the only first-round guy that I thought was in play for Green Bay that I put on the list was Lucas Van Ness. The next guy on my list was Darnell Washington, and probably early second-round guy. He hits everything that Green Bay looks for, not only from a scouting standpoint, but from a scheme standpoint and a coaching standpoint. We know how much Matt LaFleur values blocking within his offense. He's the best blocking tight end in the draft. He has a ton of upside. He's an athletic freak. He's the University of Georgia. We know Green Bay has not been shy of targeting University of Georgia players as of late. So Darnell Washington, I absolutely believe, is going to be very high on their board and is very much in play at picks 42 or 45 if he lasts that long. Could Green Bay get aggressive in moving up for a tight end? I think it's possible. I think the reason that you maybe don't go in that direction is there's a lot of tight ends that are still on the board, right? You've got a Musgrave, you've got a Laporta, you've got a Tucker Kraft, you've got a Darnell Washington, Michael Mayer. Like, you've got a ton of guys that are still on the board. So until like 3 of those guys are gone, you're probably not working super aggressively to get up, because you're feeling confident that at least one of those is going to get to you. Now, if all of a sudden 3 guys go off the board in the first 4 picks at that tight end position, now I would expect Green Bay to try to aggressively move up. Their first third-round pick, their first second-round pick plus their 4th-round pick is right around that spot where they could get to about the 5th or 6th spot in the second round. And I think if you saw a run on tight ends, they could move up there. And if there is a run, it's possible that Washington is taken by that point. But I do think he very much hits everything that they look for, and a very possible player that's in play either at pick 42, pick 45, or potentially moving up for him. Jalen Hyatt's tougher. He does not hit 2 things that Green Bay very much looks for at wide receiver. That is weight. They love their wide receivers like 195, 200 or more. He's not even close. He's, I think, in the 170s, I want to say. And then the agility too, which he didn't test great at. I believe it was in the 3-cone, but maybe it was the short shuttle. It was one of the 2 that he didn't test great in. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. And if you're going to be a skinny, fast wide receiver, they probably want you to also test well in all of the athleticism and agility drills. So the fact that he is not a blocker, he's undersized and didn't hit the agility drills, I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility, and we will see Green Bay go off of their thresholds from time to time. And I think he would be warranted of the 42nd or 45th pick if he got that far just by his playmaking ability alone. I think him and Christian Watson on the outside together would be so fun. just based on what they've done in the past at wide receiver, do not expect Jalen Hyatt to be in play. And again, we also could see Jalen Hyatt go easily within the first 5 to 6 picks of this second round as well. Appreciate the question and the super chat there, Ryan. All right, let's see. YMAC, thanks for the great analysis. Love your takes. Really appreciate that, man. Super kind of you. All right, Spencer, can you brag on Ross Uglum quick? You and him are the ultimate good guys, while also damn good evaluators. Hopefully a no pants prospect for him today. Yeah, let's talk about Ross for just a quick second. I owe Ross a ton. He was the one who brought me on at Packer Report as editor and writer at the time. And that was my first credential as, for covering the Green Bay Packers. And I still have that credential through Packer Report. And that's all through Ross Uglum. Furthermore, Ross has been an awesome friend and somebody I can confide in when need to on the side. And even more than that, he was one of the very first people that when I started the Pack-A-Day podcast that I reached out to and is like, you need to be a part of this with me. And he's like, yep, absolutely. So for those of you who don't know, Ross is stepping aside from covering the Packers. He had an awesome opportunity with a new job with the school that he was working with previously and is going to be taking that on full time. You might see him moonlight from time to time on the Pack-A-Day podcast or write an article here or there for Packer Report, but it's going to be much more in a very, very, very part-time type role as to the full-time Packer guy that he has been for basically ever now. So I'm sure we'll still see Ross around, but yes, he's had an amazing run and sad to see him not be quite as involved with the Packers, but super excited for him at the same time and super thankful for everything that he's done for me, to say the least. Pascal, really appreciate that, man. Thanks so much. All right, Judy, did you do it? Man, Judy, you are a machine. I really appreciate you. Who is your pick for a wide receiver in round 2? I am glad you asked. I have 2 guys that I think are very much going to be in play at wide receiver in round 2. The first is Rashee Rice, the wide receiver out of SMU, 9.53 RAS score guy, just turned 23 years old, hits every wide receiver threshold. Like, he is a souped up Packers guy at wide receiver. He visited with the team, which if you remember last year, 7 of their 29 guys who visited are now members of the Green Bay Packers. So that's not nothing. It's very much in the area of the draft that I expect them to target wide receivers in this 2nd to 3rd round range. So I think he's very much in play there. And he has tremendous production in his career as well. So Rashee Rice, one of the players of my 25 that screams off the page as a potential wide receiver. And then the other one is Jonathan Mingo, the wide receiver out of Ole Miss, 9.87 RAS score guy, just turned 22 years old. Every wide receiver threshold hit as well. Position of need, an area again of Green Bay that's going to target in the draft at wide receiver. Was a team captain at Ole Miss, wins with size and athleticism, can play on the outside. And I know a lot of people were telling me today, I posted my predictions at wide receiver and I put Rashee Rice and Jonathan Mingo as early 2nd round guys in this draft. And if you look at a lot of the consensus board and things like that, they're more like late 2nd, even early 3 type wide receivers. I think you're going to see those 2 and Cedric Tillman, who I don't think Green Bay is going to be quite as interested in because of the agility stuff. I think you're going to see those 3 go sooner than people expect, because those are like 3 of the only guys left that are like really good that can actually play on the outside. Like, so many of these wide receivers in this draft are more slot type wide receivers or just undersized wide receivers. These 3 are bigger receivers who can still play on the outside. And I think for that reason, you're going to see these guys go a little bit earlier. And Rashee Rice, Jonathan Mingo, would not be surprised if either of those guys, not only in play at potentially 45, but even if they went Mingo 42, I would not be shocked. If I had to guess today, I think it's going to be tight end at 42 or moving up if they want to get one of their guys at tight end, and then wide receiver at 45, either Mingo or Rashee Rice would be my guess. So that's where I'm kind of leaning right now. It's possible that maybe they feel like maybe either Rice or Mingo will be there later in the 2nd. Maybe they take that second round pick and move back. Like, you can make an argument that maybe with their first 2nd round pick, they use a 4th rounder to get up and get the tight end of their choice. And then with their second round pick, they move back, pick up a 4th round back in return, and end up getting the Rashee Rice or Jonathan Mingo at the end of the 2nd round, and basically even out your draft capital, still end up with a 4th round pick, but just kind of move up and down in the 2nd round rather than those 2 sort of middling picks. So I think that could be something that they attack as well. But Rashee Rice and Jonathan Mingo, the 2 wide receivers that I have my eye on today on day 2. All right. My mouse is being wonky. All right. Rocky Mountain. Thank you so much. First of all, I think the pick swap did more to sabotage New York than benefit Green Bay. LVN would likely have been there at 15. Dropping to New York deprived them of a top tier offensive lineman. Prefer more draft capital later over moving up with needing. Do I prefer more capital later over moving up without needing to? Let me talk about that first part and for just a second first. I think that's probably the more interesting of the two. I don't think that this is irrelevant that Green Bay moved up to pick 13. Now, a couple things. Some of you might be upset by this, but I very much think that New England was very interested in Lucas Van Ness at pick 14. So, and I don't think that it's nothing that as soon as Green Bay picked Lucas Van Ness at 13, the Patriots traded out at pick 14. I don't think that's happenstance. So there was a lot of rumors and buzz that Lucas Van Ness was a player that the Patriots liked at pick 14. So I think that that is relevant. I don't think it's completely irrelevant that that happened that way. So it's possible that had they stayed at 15, maybe they would have either needed to trade up to get Lucas Van Ness, or maybe they just would not have gotten him. Now, what might make you upset is that there's a possibility that if all of a sudden the Jets stay at 13 and take an offensive tackle, and the Patriots stay at 14 and take Lucas Van Ness, like let's say it goes Broderick Jones, Lucas Van Ness, 13, 14. The player that I think Green Bay probably takes at 15 is probably Jackson Smith-Njigba. So if you were hoping for Jackson Smith-Njigba in the moment, it seemed like, oh, they moved to 13. They're going to have a better chance to get him. In hindsight, I think if they probably stayed at 15, there's an argument to be made that they may have ended up with Jackson Smith-Njigba just by the fact that I think their other two top guys, Broderick Jones and Lucas Van Ness, may have been gone at pick 15. So again, some of you may not want to hear that because I know a lot of people were really hoping for JSN, but from Green Bay's point of view, I think the guy that they wanted was Lucas Van Ness. I don't think he would have been there at 15, or at least there's a chance that he would not have been. So from their standpoint, I don't think it was nothing that they were able to move up. Really appreciate the $10 there too, Rocky Mountain Fly. Very kind of you. All right. Lucas Schultz. Andy, I'd love to hear ideas surrounding offensive tackle prospects. What separates a great left tackle versus a great right tackle, and how urgent would you address those needs this year? Oh, that's probably too big of a question to answer all, just in this space right here. A couple things. I love DeJuan Jones, the offensive tackle out of Ohio State. I don't think he's going to be in play for Green Bay. He's not normally what they look for, although they went out and got Caleb Jones as an undrafted free agent and kept him on the 53-man roster. So maybe not entirely out of the realm of possibility, but man, that guy's an absolute dancing bear. But how I generally kind of look at it, and it's certainly more to at this day and age where left tackle and right tackle, it's less distinguishable than maybe it was at one point. But what do we have mostly in the NFL? Right-handed quarterbacks, right? So your left tackle is going to be your blindside protector. And a lot of times what you want to do is you want to build left to right, sort of like finesse pass blocking to more run blocking. So you've almost got finesse / zone blocking / pass protecting on your left side and more dominant run blocking power on your right side. And again, today it's less that way. You're building just you're like a more athletic offensive line that's going to fit your scheme. But I always like a little bit more blindside protection, really great footwork, maybe a little bit more finesse, but is going to be able to, hold up as a pass protector at left tackle. David Bakhtiari is a phenomenal example of this, although he's a good run blocker as well, but he's such an amazing, pass protector on the left side. And then right tackle, you still want somebody who can protect the quarterback, of course, but I also want somebody who can be a little bit more physical in the running game. I want my right guard to be a bit more physical in the running game. That kind of gives me, all right, if I need to run power, if I need to get that, 4th and 1, 4th and inches, I'm in the goal line, I need to make a play, I can run right side and run behind my power side. Well, meanwhile, and if I do get a little bit more pressure on my right side, at least my right-handed quarterback's looking that way. On the left side, again, if you're looking right, and all of a sudden blindside gets you, it's not going to be as easy for the quarterback to always sense that. So I always valued a little bit more pass protection, footwork on the left side, a little bit more power and strength and run blocking on the right side. Like I said, today's day and age, it's all just, you need to pass protect everywhere. Guards, centers, tackles, it doesn't matter. You've got Aaron Donalds coming at you. You've got Chris Jones is coming at you. You've got Von Millers. And a lot of the best pass rushers are now playing left side, defensive end or outside linebacker. So you have to have well-rounded athletes and well-rounded pass protectors, run blockers in just about every single position now. But that in a general basis is kind of what I look for at those positions. a player today that I like a lot that I think could be in play for Green Bay. Actually, two of them, Matthew Bergeron and Cody Mock, offensive tackle / guard out of Syracuse, offensive tackle / guard out of North Dakota State. Both of those players jump off the page as potential Packers. We know that Green Bay loves taking tackles and moving them inside. I think both of these players are probably guards at the NFL level that can, help out at tackle in a pinch if you need them to. They're extremely athletic. They have great size. I think Bergeron's the better overall player. I think Bergeron probably could play a little bit more on the outside if you needed him to, but I think both of those players would be Green Bay fits. Now, I very much expect Green Bay to be weapons heavy on day 2 of the draft today. But if Bergeron was there at 42 or 45, I mean, man, personally, I couldn't run that card to the podium quick enough. I would beyond love that pick. I think he's going to be a very good offensive lineman. Like I said, probably a left guard. If I'm Green Bay, you have Bakhtiari, Bergeron, and then move Jenkins to center, John Runyon Jr. at right guard. You have Yashin and Zach Tom competing at right tackle. And then if Bakhtiari is gone next year, now you have Bergeron, Jenkins, Zach Tom. At minimum, maybe Rasheed Walker or Caleb Jones can get in the conversation. But you've got quite a few guys that have the potential to compete at that left tackle position. So would really, really like that pick for Green Bay. Really appreciate that, Lewis. All right. Let's see, CBMD81. Which wide receivers have the potential to be a true number 1 wide receiver? I really like Jonathan Mingo. I think if you're talking about potential picks today, I really like Jonathan Mingo. You throw him on and you're just like, what am I missing? Because he's young, he's extremely athletic, he's an outside wide receiver, he can win with speed, he has a highlight reel of ridiculous catches, he can win at the catch point. He has some of the Jalen Hyatt like speed stuff where he just runs away from people, but also is strong and physical at the point of attack. Like, I don't know what I'm missing. If they pick him in the second round today, I will be running circles around my Sobieski, Wisconsin house. So Jonathan Mingo is the guy that I think has the potential to be a true number 1 wide receiver. And while I said I don't think they take him, I really like Jalen Hyatt as well. This is a Deshaun Jackson type of guy, in my opinion. Yeah, Deshaun Jackson's not going to block. Yeah, Deshaun Jackson's not going to live over the middle. You know what this guy can do over and over is win deep down the field. And he's got good hands at the catch point. A lot of these deep ball wide receivers don't have that. Hyatt's a natural catcher. I don't think they pick him, but I think he has some really high upside. I see a lot of Deshaun Jackson in Jalen Hyatt. Appreciate that. Tyler Straber, any special teams players on your radar day 3? I think Moody, the kicker from Michigan, would be worth a 7th. Moody, the kicker, is probably the one that I have on my radar. Here's the thing. I'm sure Dane Brugler has probably spent a little bit of time on kickers. I couldn't even begin to tell you how to break down a long snapper. I know you want some quick rotations on the ball and you got your stopwatch out and how quick it can, get from snap to holder. I know the punter technique is a big deal, and your drop point and how quickly you can, do the entire process. All those things. I don't know. That's the least of my worries is some of those special teams traits and scouting. And so yeah, Moody is the one that I'm keeping an eye on, but a lot of times we get to day 3 of the draft and we're all expecting this one kicker punter that got like a little bit of buzz to go early. And then like some other random kicker goes in like the 5th round and you're like, I didn't even know that guy existed. And that usually is what takes place. So I do think to probably better answer your question, Tyler, I do think they're very much going to be interested in a kicker on day 3 of the draft. I think Mason Crosby's probably played his last or kicked his last ball for Green Bay. But yeah, I do think they'll be in search of one, and Moody could easily be the kicker from Michigan that could be in play for Green Bay on day 3. Judy, again, thank you again. What makes a tackle in college to projecting guard in the NFL? Is it all arm length? It is not all arm length. A lot of it is size and physicality. A lot of, sometimes shorter offensive tackles with sometimes shorter arms, can kick inside to guard. But a lot of times it's footwork. A lot of times it's agility. Sometimes players just don't have the footwork to play on the outside at tackle. And if they don't have the footwork and size to play outside at tackle, sometimes they can move inside the left guard. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes they don't have the agility to play at right tackle. So you kick them inside. Maybe they play right guard in the NFL. It can really be for a variety of different reasons. Sometimes the height, sometimes the weight, sometimes the agility, sometimes the arm length, sometimes the overall strength. Like it can all potentially be in play. And, a lot of times what happens is, as we sort of talked about earlier, a lot of times that left tackle is one of the most important because it protects the blind side. So what do all the college teams do? They take their best offensive lineman and they just immediately put him at left tackle. They don't care about height, weight, speed, and they care about it, but not as much in the, as the NFL is going to. They just want their best blocker playing left tackle, and that's their concern. And they're not necessarily worried of like, what is his long-term position supposed to be? And that's where Green Bay's had a lot of success, taking that best player, that usually that left tackle, and saying, all right, where do they best fit in the NFL? And then sort of taking them over and grooming them for a different position. And we've seen Green Bay, like I said, have a ton of success with that. So it can be a variety of different things, Judy. All right, Luke, just want to say thank you for carrying the G. Nagler and you are my daily listens. What's the running back that reminds people of Amon Green? He's my favorite backer ever. Israel Abanikanda, and somebody I have on my potential list for day 3 today at running back. We know what Green Bay likes. I love young players. He's not a premium position, obviously, but young player. He's the youngest player in the draft that I'm aware of, 20 years old, hasn't even turned 21 yet. Wouldn't even be able to have a celebratory PBR or a spotted cow in Green Bay when he gets drafted. He catches the ball well in the backfield. He moves insanely well. He's got fantastic size, runs behind his pads, runs with power. This is another player like Jonathan Mingo. Like, again, I'm like, what the heck am I missing here? He was like day 5, like round 5, early in the process. He's been now moved up. He was on Bob McGinn's top 100 list. I think he probably goes end of round 3. It would not shock me, even late round 2, early round 3. He's a very, very fun running back, tested extremely well. And again, still 20 years old. And like I said, a little bit of Amon Green to his game. And again, catches the ball well out of the backfield, has the size to potentially be a really good pass blocker with time as well. As you can tell, I really like me some Israel Abanikanda. Jason, thank you so much for a couple beers at Anapee this weekend. Thanks for all the hard work and great info. Appreciate that, Jason. Really thoughtful of you. And yes, I'm not too far from the Anapee in the Howard, Little Swamico type location. So I've definitely been there a couple times before. Just want to make sure I got to everyone's super chats here and didn't miss any. Thank you very much for this, Pascal. Super nice of you. I don't know if I hit that one earlier. Sorry, I know dead air is not the coolest thing in the world, but yeah, I think I got to all of those. Thanks so much for all those super chats, everyone. Let's see if I can get a couple other questions here. Let's see. Any thoughts on a slot wide receiver that they may target? Not necessarily a slot wide receiver, but Rashee Rice really started off as a slot receiver. And then this past year, he moved to the outside. So he could be somebody that I think we know that Green Bay likes having wide receivers that can play all over. Romeo Doubs can play outside, can play in the slot. Christian Watson can play outside, can play in the slot. I think Rashee Rice would be another one of those players that can play outside, can play in the slot. I think the more that you can do to get on the field for Matt LaFleur and Green Bay, the better opportunity that you're just going to have to make plays. Obviously, like ultimately become a player. It's tough to do that if you're not getting on the field. Rice doesn't have a ton of special teams value, so it's going to be important that he has that versatility. But he would be a player like, if you look at Green Bay, unfortunately, the only guy that they really took as of late that was just like a true slot wide receiver, Randall Cobb would be the one before that, but it was Amari Rodgers, and it was just unfortunately a total bust. But they usually like more of the like all around, wide receivers that can play a variety of different positions. Devontae Adams could play outside in the slot. Jordy Nelson, Greg Jennings, all these guys could play outside or in the slot. And that's usually what they prefer. But Rashee Rice to me would be that guy that you can move around to every different position. He can win in a variety of different ways. All right, Andrew, 2 tight ends in round 2. Which 2 would work together? This is a fun question. I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility. Here's the really fun answer. I don't think there's any 2 that you could take that would not work together, because the only thing that you don't really want is just 2 pure receiving tight ends. And there's not really that. I think Laporta is going to continue to grow as a blocker. I think Musgrave is a better blocker sometimes than he gets credit for. We know Mayer is an all-around tight end. Darnell Washington is a phenomenal blocker. He's a really good blocking tight end that is probably going to evolve into a phenomenal blocking tight end. Tucker Kraft is an all-around tight end. So I don't think that there's any wrong way that you can go. I think the rest of this tight end class is really in the eye of the beholder. I think it would have been tough if Kincaid was still on the board and like you drafted Kincaid and Musgrave, maybe Kincaid and Laporta. I think that would have probably been a little bit less than ideal. I think you probably want somebody that's a little bit of a better blocker to tag team together. But if I had to choose, I mean, my dream, Musgrave is the guy that I absolutely love. I would want Musgrave, and then just give me Mayer or Washington as one of the other two if I could, ultimately have it that way. But keep an eye on Tucker Kraft too. I think Green Bay is going to really like him and would expect him very much to be in play at either pick 42 or pick 45. All right. Well, let's not speak this into the universe too much, Perry, but what position would be the most disappointing if drafted in round 2, especially at 42? I think a lot of fans would probably have a hard time if that was Will Levis. Wouldn't it just be the most Brian Brohm thing in the world to just add one more parallel to this Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love situation? Like everything is paralleled so insanely much. And yeah, that would be like the next thing is that Will Levis is this year's Brian Brohm. Brian Brohm expected to be a first round pick, falls to the second round. Green Bay stops his slide at the beginning of the second. And then Will Levis expected to be a first round pick, in Rodgers' first year as a starter, slides to the second. Green Bay would be the team again that stopped it. Not going to happen. Don't stress, but that would be like just another insane parallel. I think a lot of people would be disappointed in that. I think probably edge would probably be the other thing that a lot of people would be disappointed in. If they went edge right after taking Lucas Van Ness, I think people would have a really hard time with that. There's a couple edges that, still scream off the page as Green Bay type players. Just don't think they can do it after, putting pick 13 into it. And I think probably off-ball linebacker would probably be the other one at this point. There's a couple of really fun ones out there. Drew Sanders, was it Drew Sanders? He's the guy at Arkansas, I think. He's a really fun player. Immediately liked him as soon as I watched the tape. So here's what happens, why I sometimes screw up these names, is I watch all 22. So I don't get any announcers. So like, I'm just watching the number on film and nobody ever says the name. So why I struggle with some of these names over and over in the draft is because when you're watching, it's Drew Sanders. When you're watching the draft on all 22 tape, you just never hear the names. And like, that's why it never connects quite as much as it is with all the other players that I study. But I think off-ball linebacker would probably be another one that is probably a no-no for Green Bay at pick 42. So quarterback, edge, off-ball linebacker, I think would be the three that would be really tough if Green Bay went in that direction. Judy, really, really appreciate you these last couple of days. Absolutely amazing. With the amount of special team specialists already in the roster, do you think it's imperative to draft guys who can play teams as well? By the way, I also appreciate your content. I've learned so much. Nagler and Grassi led me to you. First of all, that's awesome. Thank you, Nagler and Grassi. I've collaborated with both of them on numerous occasions. Two amazing people. Love working with both of them. I think day 3 of this draft, they're still going to look for guys that can contribute on special teams in some capacity. A lot of times those are like deal breakers. If you're deciding between two players, like 2 wide receivers in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, all right, which guy can help on special teams too? If you're deciding between 2 off-ball linebackers in the 6th round, all right, which one can play teams and get on the field on teams and help out there as well? Same thing when you're making roster cutdowns, right? When you're trying to get to 53, all right, which player is going to still be able to help on teams. So when you're a day 3 guy, sometimes your only opportunity to get on the field to begin with is by playing special teams. Like you're not even going to see the field if you don't, like, let's take a guy like Tyler Goodson or a Patrick Taylor, for instance, right? I really like both of them at running backs. They have 0% chance of seeing the field at running back because Jones and Dillon are both there, unless there's an injury, of course. So your only opportunity is if you go out and make a major impact on teams. And then which one are they going to call up? If it's Patrick Taylor or Tyler Goodson, which one are they going to feel comfortable calling up on game day if they need a third running back? The guy that's going to be able to help them on teams. So that gets you activated. And then if there is an injury to one of the 2 the 2 running backs, Dillon or Jones, the guy that was activated because he got to play teams is the guy that's going to get the snaps. And the only way you get your opportunity, the only way that you get that shot to show what you can actually do sometimes is because you were active on game day for teams. And then you can actually go out and show and then you get, maybe 10 carries in the game and Tyler Goodson all of a sudden goes off for 10 carries, 90 yards. And you're like, oh, Tyler Goodson can play. We need to get him the ball more. And the only reason you know that is because he was able to get on the field on teams. And that hasn't happened. That's a facetious example, but that is a lot of times the case. So day 3, roster cut downs, it's special teams that ultimately breaks the tie there. And we know how influential Rich Bisaccia has been as of late. So don't underestimate special teams, especially on day 3 of this draft. Brian O'Connor, if we trade up, would you expect a tight end or a wide receiver? Tight end. I don't think there's a wide receiver on the board that they will be trading up for. As I mentioned, the 2 that scream off the page for Green Bay Packers are Mingo and Rice. And I think both of those are, you could argue, would be a little bit of a reach at 42 or 45. So I don't think they're trading up for either of them. In fact, like I said, I think they'd probably trade down for either of those guys. Jalen Hyatt doesn't fit exactly. Josh Downs doesn't fit exactly. Like, none of the other wide receivers are prototypical Green Bay Packer wide receivers that they look for. So if they moved up, I would very much expect that it was for a tight end, or maybe it's for a Brian Branch. He's not the prototypical safety either, but we saw them go a little bit outside of their thresholds for like a Darnell Savage as well. And he's a really good football player. So if they wanted to fix that safety with arguably the best safety in the draft and go get Brian Branch, maybe that would be a player too. But choosing between the 2, I think tight end would be the player. Like, if all of a sudden pick 36, 35, whatever it is, 37 comes and you see the pick is in, or like the Green Bay Packers have traded up and the pick is in, I would probably be betting tight end would be the pick at that point. Probably a Michael Mayer, Darnell Washington would probably be my guess. Take a quick drink here. And again, thanks so much for the super chat, Brian. All right, let's see what else we got here. Grassi Posse, absolutely, Michael. Cool announcement by him other day as well. Jarrett, what can you do? Give us what you can do on special teams. Rich Bisaccia is dying to know. Yes, and Lucas Van Ness did have 2 block punts in college. I made the joke. Did Bisaccia make the pick? I made the joke that when the entire Rodgers thing was going on and Green Bay only signed special teams players, the only guy they re-signed was Keyshawn Nixon, a special teams player primarily. I made the joke that was like, Brian had too much on his hands with the Aaron Rodgers trade. And it's just like, hey, Rich, do you mind like just kind of taking over for a little bit? And Rich is like, yeah, I'll take over, and just did all special teams all the time. So I'm sure Rich was not super upset by seeing that Lucas Van Ness blocked a couple punts in college. I think he got an award from his team too for his special teams ability, and I think specifically blocking those 2 punts. Ken, thanks so much. No question, just compensating you for your superb analysis. Nice call yesterday. Thanks so much, Ken. Every once in a while, I get something right, and you can bet I'm going to brag about it over and over and over and over again. All right, let's see. Hope they take a tight end. Me too, man. Me too. Listen, they are going to take weapons today. I really think so. And I don't know how much I want to get into this, but let's just do it. Screw it. I know that, let's put it this way. The coach's job and the player's job, no matter who is on this roster, is to win a Super Bowl this year. That doesn't change ever. Every single player that is on the 90-man roster, the practice squad, the 53 eventually, guys that get picked up midseason, their goal is to win a Super Bowl. No question about it. Every coach on this team, from Matt LaFleur to Joe Barry to Adam Stenovich to Rich Bisaccia to everyone else, their goal is to win a Super Bowl this year. No question about it. There's no argument there. Those groups are trying to win a Super Bowl every year, no matter what. Brian Gutekunst, his job is to figure out the right time to go all in and try to win a Super Bowl. Now, we can have a big conversation as to whether or not he did a good enough job of that when the window was open. The answer is probably no, or at least obviously no, because they didn't win one. But right now, it is very safe to say that it is not the GM's time to go all in and try to win a Super Bowl. They're not going to go out and spend, mortgage a bunch more of the future to try to bring people in. They're not going to give up future 1st and 2nd round picks to try to get talent in the door right now. That would be really stupid when you've got a 1st-year starter at quarterback and a team that has, if we're being honest, some pretty significant holes on the roster. It needs some new depth. It needs some new playmaking. Right now, in 2023, it is Brian Gutekunst's job to amass as much talent as possible. It is not his job this weekend. In fact, we should be hoping that it's not his job this weekend to just go fill needs. If Brian Branch is the highest guy on their board with pick 42, they should be taking Brian Branch. If at pick 45, Matthew Bergeron is the best player on their board at pick 45, they should be taking Matthew Bergeron. In the 3rd round, if Israel Abanikanda is the best player on their board in their 3rd round pick, they should be taking Israel Abanikanda. And you know what they did? They took a safety, an offensive lineman, and a running back. All 3, I love the players. They're all amazing. I would love all 3 picks. Neither of them addressed tight end or wide receiver. And everyone would be freaking out because they didn't address tight end or wide receiver. Draft is not for need, especially in a season where, as a GM, you're not aggressively attacking the roster to try to win a Super Bowl. Right now, the goal is to attack the draft and attack the offseason by getting as many young, talented players as you possibly can. And I know that people are going to look at the roster and be like, well, how can you expect Jordan Love to succeed? They will, like I said, I very much expect them to attack weapons today in some capacity, but they're going to find players in this draft, whether it's today or tomorrow, that they're going to be able to help this roster at those positions. And furthermore, if they need to pick up a couple guys here and there to fill in the roster after the draft is over using cheap free agency, ways that they've found in the past, Keyshawn Nixon's and Rasul Douglas's and Devondre Campbell's and Rick Wagner's amongst others, like they will do so. They will go out and add a couple cheap free agents to fill out that roster so that they can get the best evaluation of Jordan Love and see how this offense can function with a first-time quarterback. But now is not the time where you're not going all in and going for it all to just be like, we have to, like, to have your, check box and be like, all right, we got to get a tight end. I don't care who's there. We got to get a tight end. We got to get a wide receiver. I don't care if it, like, this is normally a guy that would go in a 4th round in most drafts. We got to take him in the 2nd round because we have this big need at wide receiver. Like, you just can't do that at this point. You have to take the best players that are available and start filling up this roster with playmakers and just talent overall. So need should almost never factor into a draft. If you're in an extreme all-in scenario, F them picks, whatever, then trade away your picks and get talent, or trade away picks and move up and get the best players you can to win right now. That's fine. I get it. But Green Bay is nowhere near that spot right now. And right now they should just be trying to amass as much talent as they possibly can get. All right. Rocky Mountain again, appreciate you. So summing up the pick swap, LVM was our guy and benefits the defense, especially in the long run. Missing out on JSN is the less egregious of the 2 options. I think Justice Mosqueda said this best. Like, look at all the edge rushers that just got taken on day 1. There's what, like 7, 8 of them? I think 8 of them. It would be a lot harder and there was 1 tight end taken, right? If they took Michael Mayer or Dalton Kincaid or one of those guys at pick 13, a lot of people would have been happy. They got somebody for Jordan Love. Let's say they wanted to come back and get an edge rusher at pick 42. Wouldn't have been as great. Maybe a Keon White, a 24-year-old Keon White makes it that long. I don't know. Maybe there's a couple other guys that could have some interest in Green Bay, and Isaiah Foskey. I think that could be, maybe somebody that would have interested them. But here's the question. Would you rather have Mayer at 13 and, Foskey or, one of those guys at pick 42? Or would you rather have a premium edge rusher in Lucas Van Ness and then come back at 42 and potentially still get a Lucas Musgrave, a Sam Laporta, one of those sort of guys? Like, I would much rather have them get the premium edge rusher at 13 and then go and get the tight end at 42. So I think they're in a better position today by taking the edge rusher when they did than trying to figure out how they're going to get one in round 2 or round 3 of this draft. Nick Saldivari or A.T. Perry, realistic options in 3rd. I think A.T. Perry is very much an option in the 3rd. I actually had him as an honorable mention on my top 25 players that are most likely Green Bay Packers. He was an honorable mention on my list. I would go probably him over Saldivari at this point, but both certainly could be options. I just think Perry fits a little bit better for what they're looking for. Thanks for keeping us level here, Andy. I do my best, but I'm sure, listen, I get things wrong too. It just happens. Like, the beautiful thing about football and sports in general, but the beautiful thing about football in the NFL is, like, we all love talking about this stuff, right? And we all have different ideas on what the best way to build a team is. And the cool thing, 32 teams have a totally different way of what the best way to build a team is. Some of them are really freaking good at it, like the Philadelphia Eagles, and somehow getting Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith at picks 10 or 9 and 30. And it's just stupid, like, how things fall to them and what they can get. They're amazing at it. And then other teams, like I told you, the Lions, right? They picked literally my 2 favorite players in the draft in Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell. But man, that is rich to pay those premium picks for a running back and an off-ball linebacker. I mentioned 28 out of 32 were premium position players. The Lions took 2 of them that were not. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I love both those players. Love both of those players. But man, even for me, my two favorite players in the draft, I'm like, I don't think I would have done that. I think that's really steep price for both of those guys. So the beautiful thing is that every team has a different way of going about this. Every fan has a different way that they think is going about this. And that's what makes it so fun to talk about. If there was a perfect way to build a Super Bowl champion, everyone would be doing it. Everyone would be copycatting everyone else. The only, the best way that teams have figured out right now, get yourselves Patrick Mahomes in his prime, get yourself a Tom Brady in his prime, get yourself an Aaron Rodgers in his prime, and, hope that it amounts to some Super Bowls. Like that's all you can do and hope for. Everything else is just like, we're just trying to figure it out as you go along and hope that you can ultimately win a Super Bowl. Even the Eagles, who have figured out, Jalen Hurts in the second round and hit on him massively and got him on a cheap contract last year until he signed his big contract this offseason. Did everything to build that roster perfectly. They trade a first for AJ Brown and it could not have gone better. They draft Jordan Mailata in the 7th round, a rugby player, and he ends up being one of the best left tackles in football. They get almost everything right. You know what happens? Sometimes you still run into Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl and you lose. Like that's how hard it is in the NFL to win Super Bowls. And that's what makes it so fun is that everyone has a different way of going about it. JJ Watt is Lucas Van Ness's ceiling. I don't think JJ Watt is Lucas Van Ness's ceiling. I said Jared Allen, the former Minnesota Viking. That's the type of upside that I saw. Now, it's not a huge difference there. They're both, I think, Hall of Fame players. I think Jared Allen either made it or was a finalist. I think that's the type of player that you're looking at here. I think he's a really fun football player. I think he's going to have a very high upside. I think he needs to figure out a way to become a little bit more of a playmaker. He won a lot of reps, didn't lose a lot of reps. There was a lot of stalemates on his tape. But I think he needs to find a way to be, like I said, a little bit more of a playmaker in the NFL if he wants to reach that level. But you're talking size, speed, agility, functional strength. There's a reason they call him Hercules. He's a very fun player, and I think he's going to make a very big impact for this Packers defense. But again, he's going to have to find a way to become a little bit more of a playmaker. But Jared Allen is the player that I kind of comp him to as a high-end upside. All right. Let's see here. Mark, can't we wait on tight end and instead trade down with somebody like Cincinnati to get 60 and 90? Kraft, Kuntz, Schoonmaker are all legit tight end options. Yeah, I think there are some options to attack tight end later in this draft. I think Kuntz, as you mentioned, Tucker Kraft, Schoonmaker. Another one is was it Josh Wiley, the tight end out of Cincinnati? I think he's somebody that Green Bay could very much have an eye on in round 3 in this draft as well. The Penn State kid, was it Brenton Strange? There's another kid that I think very much could be in play for them as well there. So yes, I do think that there is an opportunity that if Green Bay doesn't attack tight end in round 2, there's still going to be a lot left in round 3. So they could easily look to take one in round 3. They could even move up in round 3 to make sure that they get one of those guys. I really like the options that are there in round 2. So I'm kind of hopeful that they're going to get one with 42 or 45, but there potentially are some options in the 3rd round as well that they could attack. And don't be surprised if they get one in the 2nd and come back and take one of those guys that you just mentioned in the 3rd round too. I think that is very much on the option on the table as well, that they could get 2 of those guys. Edmundo, love your content. Where did you get the poster behind you? I think we take a tight end at 42. Really appreciate that, man. I don't remember. I want to say it might've just been off of Amazon. I don't remember. I honestly don't remember, but yeah, I love it. Love the Bart star behind. Love just the nice, simple black and white. And yeah, it's perfect. So I appreciate that. Yes, I do think 42 very much in play. And yes, please don't wait for a tight end in round 3, jinx round. Yes, I'm with you. Although this is the year it's going to break. And remember the last tight end that was really, really great in Green Bay, Jermichael Finley, 3rd round pick. So not totally cursed, just been cursed for like a decade. So I like Shoemaker, but he's 20 or 39 years old. He's only going to be 25 in October, if I remember correctly. He's a little overaged, but he's a good tight end. He might be a little bit lower on their board because of that age, but like I said, he's a good tight end. Somebody's going to take him probably in round 3 and get a pretty good player out of it. Let's see. Safeties for day 2. Quan Martin's the guy. Jartavius Quan Martin out of Illinois is the guy that I have my eyes on. Fits a lot of Green Bay's thresholds at safety. I think he can play in that cover 2 safety that Green Bay likes. I think he can fit Joe Barry's defense. Came in for a visit in Green Bay. Kind of hits everything. Just turned 23 years old. That's a player that I think makes a ton of sense for the Packers. He was my prediction for round 3 for Green Bay. Round 2, I said Tucker Kraft and Jonathan Mingo, and then round 3, Quan Martin at that point. So let's see here. All right, favorite day 3 tight ends. Josh Wiley, if he makes it to day 3, would by far and away be my favorite day 3 tight end. And you look at that player, like he is, he fits the eye test extremely well. He moves well. He catches the ball well. Didn't do quite as much. Didn't have the production I would have quite as liked for a player of that athleticism at Cincinnati. But man, he passes the eye test in a major way. I think he probably comes off at end of day 2, but if he gets into day 3 and move up in round 4 and go get that kid at the beginning of round 4. Diego Ayala, I saw Rashee Rice play live at SMU. First thing I thought was this guy's going to be a Packer, absolute baller, speaking it into reality. You could make an argument, Diego, that there is no wide receiver in this draft that was more scream at you Green Bay Packer than Rashee Rice. And I went back and forth for my official prediction as whether or not it would be Jonathan Mingo or Rashee Rice. I couldn't decide. I ultimately went with Mingo. I think there's a very good chance that it could ultimately be Rashee Rice, but I think one of those guys is going to end up being a Green Bay Packer. But yeah, he's a really fun player. Glad you got to see him at SMU. Judy, next live chat is going to be after day 3 tomorrow, and might bring on a couple special guests as well. So hoping to talk with a couple people that know the draft very, very well, and will kind of walk us through some of these prospects that Green Bay got on day 3. All right. Just banned him for those who were asking for it. Just going through some questions here. Actually, this is an interesting one, Adam. Lucas Van Ness is an edge. When I spoke about him the last couple of days, yes, first of all, he is an edge. Brian mentioned him as an edge. I really thought, especially after watching his 2022 tape, that he's going to be a primary edge rusher. I went back today and watched a lot of his 2021 tape. They played him a ton inside, and he held up surprisingly well on the interior of the defensive line. He's not going to be like your 3 technique as a defensive lineman. That he's not going to be, Devontae Wyatt, TJ Slayton. Like he's not going to be in the defensive line rotation. He is absolutely going to play more than I originally thought as a interior rusher on passing downs. Like he will put his hand in the ground and rush from the inside. I think you have a fun rotation there. Kenny Clark can rush from inside. Devontae Wyatt hopefully turns into that player. And then you're going to have, Rashawn Gary, you can move a little bit inside, and then Lucas Van Ness as well. So yes, he's an edge rusher. The more I watched him, the more I liked him with a head of steam. So standing up outside 3-4, getting a little bit of a running start, that's where you're like, oh crap, this guy named Hercules that's built like a tank and has a chiseled 6-pack and is 6'5", 275 is coming at me with extreme pace, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. And then that's when he's intimidating, and you're like, I don't know what he's going to do. He can come at me with strength. He could try to get by me with speed. That's when he's really at his best. So yes, he is an edge rusher, but I was much more impressed with this 2021 when they used him a lot more inside with his ability to hold up at the point of attack and really kind of get some pressure from the inside as well. So definitely an edge, but don't be surprised if he's got his hand in the ground on some obvious pass rush scenarios as well. Appreciate the insight. Excited for LVN's upside. Really appreciate that, Rocky Mountain. Thanks for coming in strong today. Really appreciate that. All right, let's see here. Chatterhead, really appreciate that. You are the man. Thank you for your daily content. When Aaron started his first year in 2008, we drafted Brian Brom in round 2, hoping we don't end up with Levis. I like Jaron Hall in round 5 or round 6. Man, I really like Jaron Hall as well. He's another one that's like 48 years old. He's 25, I think. But there is a play that on tape with Jaron Hall. So the hardest throw that you want to see a quarterback make in college is the opposite hash deep out route. It's like a 20-yard out from the opposite hash. So you just want to see them rip it on a line, because with that, you have to throw it with some anticipation, right? Because if you wait for that wide receiver to break on a 20-yard out from the opposite hash. Remember, those college hashes are extremely wide, right? So like if you see that and you don't throw it with anticipation, that thing's getting pick six like all day, every day. He had a throw on a 20-yard out from the opposite hash that he got back, looked like, did a little look left, came back right, ripped it on a line to the right side. The wide receiver didn't even get to the top of his route yet. Turns around, gets there, ball's right there. And it was honestly, of all the quarterbacks that I studied, that was the throw that I most, when there was one by Anthony Richardson too, that was just absurd. But that was the throw that I was just my most like, I think I played that thing back like 100 times. I'm like, who, Jaron Hall? Like, what are we doing here, Jaron Hall? It was a beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous throw. So yes, Jaron Hall, really like him as well. If they got him in round 5 or round 6, a little bit, like I said, overage. I think he'd come in older than Jordan Love at this point. But who cares? He's a good quarterback, really, really fun. You know who he is? Like, there's not a ton of difference with Jaron Hall, in my opinion, than Baker Mayfield. Like that, there's some Baker Mayfield to his game. The guy that went first overall not too long ago. All right, let's see here. He's another really fun player that unfortunately I don't think isn't going to be in play for the Green Bay Packers. Tank Dell, primary slot receiver, and a little bit overaged as well, if I remember correctly. He is so fun on tape. I mean, just ridiculously fun, but rail thin. Maybe that was it. I don't know if it was overage. I think it was the weight that was a little bit of an issue for Green Bay, but I don't think he's going to be in play for Green Bay. But man, punt return ability, just stupid stuff that he does in the slot that he just moves in a very different way than you see players move at that slot position. And he just finds space all the time. And I would love Tank Dell, just unfortunately don't expect it to be with the Green Bay Packers. All right. Hey, thanks so much for joining from Portugal, David. That's awesome. Tonight is tight end night. Not sure how the Packers can address safety if Brian Branch falls. Yeah, I think, like I said, I think Quan Martin very much could be in play. I think they could even move up in round 3 for like a Quan Martin. I think that's a really tough thing, right? So let's go over safety really quick in a couple ways. First of all, it's not a good safety draft at all. And even like the top 2 safeties in this draft don't fit Green Bay's thresholds and aren't generally their cup of tea for the safety position. Even a guy like Quan Martin, not exactly, but close enough. And that's why I think they're going to be interested in him. But here's the other thing at safety. Their depth chart is like 7 guys deep that are 53-man roster players. They got Darnell Savage. They signed Tarvarius Moore. They got Rudy Ford, Dallin Levitt, Ennis Gaines. Who am I missing? I feel like there's at least one more. But they've got like 5 or 6 guys that are 53-man roster potential players on this team. They don't need, and all of them play special teams, by the way. They don't need a guy. They don't need like a 6th round pick at safety. Like that's just like throwing something at it at this point. Like that probably is not going to do it. Tariq Carpenter, that's another one. Yeah, so they have a bunch of safeties that they can put on their 53-man roster. All of them can play special teams, and all of them can be good backup safeties. The issue is they don't have a starter. I know Savage is going to start. He hasn't been a good starter. I prefer him not starting at safety, but he's going to have to. We know that. And then they don't have another one. Yeah, Rudy Ford can play some. I don't think that's ideal. Tarvarius Moore's played some. That's certainly not ideal. And, maybe Tariq Carpenter can take a jump. Ennis Gaines started in the slot in playoff game or in their pseudo playoff game against the Lions last year. He played a lot of snaps there in the last couple games. Maybe he can be a guy, but there's nobody that excites you as a starter. But just getting like a 5th or 6th or 7th round safety for the sake of getting one, you're just competing with other guys that you already have at that position that can do probably the same things, play special teams and be a backup safety. You have those in spades. You need a top end guy, and there's just not that guy in this draft. So if you can find other guys in this draft at positions that can come in and be good starters for you or good players for you, like just screw it. Go get those guys and figure out safety in a different way when you're competing at a higher level in the next couple seasons. No, I would not bring back Adrian Amos. Like if you get him for a vet minimum, fine. But here's the thing. And I know I saw this too at wide receiver. Green Bay needs a vet wide receiver. Green Bay needs a vet wide receiver. Like they've got to have somebody. They can't just go with like rookies and 2nd-year players. Why not? You want another Sammy Watkins in that's just going to snipe snaps from Samori Toure and Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs and whatever wide receivers that you draft this year and take those snaps away from the guys that actually need it to develop on the same timeline that Jordan Love is going to be developing on? No, let those guys get out there together and play. Are there going to be mistakes? Yeah. Is it going to be pretty? No. But like, just to have a veteran wide receiver to take away those snaps when you're going to probably sign the guy to a 1 year, $1.7 million deal or something. And that's not going to help you win playoff games this year and isn't going to help you long-term because it's just going to be a vet wide receiver on a 1 year deal. What? So they can put the armor on the guy and mentor him. That's what your wide receiver coach is for. I love having a veteran on the team to mentor some of those guys in the right situation. But like, I don't know. I at this point, you should be cultivating young talent that can open up your window for you in 2024, 2025, 2026 and beyond. Adding just a wide receiver, like I said, like a Sammy Watkins to snipe snaps from the guys that you want developing. No, thanks. I'm good. Same thing at safety. Give me Tariq Carpenter and Ness Gaines. I will rather take both of those guys than Amos, who is going to sign if you got him back on a 1 year vet minimum deal. Again, Amos isn't at this point going to help you win a Super Bowl in 2023. So I'd rather try to develop guys and see if they can be something in 2024, 2025, which I know Amos is not going to be by the time that next Super Bowl window opens. So give me the young guys at this point. Do you think Tariq could evolve into a starter, or is he more of a slot guy? He's not a slot guy. He's more of a box safety guy. Listen, Tariq was quietly really, really good on special teams a season ago. It wouldn't shock me if they gave him a chance. Now, Savage Tariq is a sort of kind of unique, interesting safety combo. You kind of got your smaller, speedier guy, and then you got your bigger, more physical guy. It's like the cheapest, like thrift store version of Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor that you could possibly have. That is the ultimate like thrift store that you're not even sure if you really want to go into. That's like the thriftiest thrift store version of Thomas and Chancellor from back in the day. But it's kind of like the same thing. You got your big, more physical safety. You've got your smaller, more athletic safety. It's the exact same thing, except totally opposite, because two of them are insanely good, almost Hall of Fame caliber players, and the other are barely rosterable. But you get my point. They have the same sort of traits at times. So I think you could maybe try something like that, but I'm intrigued by Tariq Carpenter as more of a box physical safety, and wouldn't mind seeing him get some snaps. And this game's another one that I wouldn't mind seeing get some snaps. Is it ideal? No, not at all. You would prefer that those guys aren't seeing snaps on defense. You would prefer that you had a Cam Chancellor and an Earl Thomas, but unfortunately you don't. So you got to make do with what you have. All right. A couple more questions here, then we'll probably get out of here. Try Rasul at safety. Rasul is just such a natural outside boundary corner that can play a little bit more physical. If you don't play him there, you're kind of wasting him. So yeah, there's certainly some benefits. If Green Bay went today and got like a corner in round 2 that you wanted to play, and Stokes comes back and you want to play Keyshawn Nixon more, you could maybe move him back there. I don't know. I don't think it's the best position. And again, you probably got Rasul for 1 more year. So just kind of let him do what he does best, and, probably not try to reinvent the wheel too much. Oh, I love this question. Where did it just go? All right. C2341. What's our realistic aims this season? All right. So the biggest thing is Jordan Love. This is Jordan Love season. All right. So can he be the starter? Can he be the long-term starter? And how can you develop him into a good starter, to a great starter? That's what this season is about. I think that's 1A. I think 1B is that this is a extreme evaluation season. Aaron's gone. There's no more Hall of Fame quarterback, at least not right now. Maybe Jordan can become that. I think that will very much remain to be seen, but you want to evaluate everything right now. The defense was not good enough last year. Now you just added another first-round pick to that defense. Joe Barry, very much on the hot seat. Matt LaFleur, your offense didn't really look that unique and fancy these past couple seasons. Was that because Aaron was stubborn and didn't want to run your stuff and wanted to run his stuff? Or was that because you just weren't that great at it? You want to evaluate that. Jordan Love, can you be a starter in the NFL? Want to evaluate that. Like all of the first round picks from a season ago, Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt, can you guys become much better players than you were a season ago in your rookie years? There's a lot of young players that are going to be evaluated. The special teams, even though Rich Bisaccia took a pretty significant step with that group a season ago, was still a bottom third of the league special teams. And Keyshawn Nixon was kind of the only thing that sort of saved it. So I want to see that special teams take another jump. Rome wasn't built in a day. They need a massive makeover that takes more than a year, but can that special teams take a jump? Like, I think this is a really big evaluation year. So 1A would be Jordan Love, 1B would be evaluation. And then 1C is from a front office standpoint, how much young talent can you get in and start developing? And then it's developing those younger players. Like I said, you're not trying for a Super Bowl window in 2023. If it happens, all of a sudden you have that crazy season that nobody saw coming and you make some sort of crazy run, awesome. Those are the best things in the world. Like nothing can possibly beat that. And all of us would be there for it, but you're not expecting it. In the meantime, you're trying to make incremental increases to the roster and develop young players that can open up that next window in 24, 25, 26, 27, whenever that next window ultimately opens. So I would say those are the realistic aims for this upcoming season. All right. Best guys to replace Lowry and Reed or to back up Wyatt and Slayton. You kind of answered your question within the question. Wyatt and Slayton are going to be the guys that have to take a major step this upcoming season. So you're going to have Kenny Clark as your primary defensive lineman. And then your next two guys up are going to be Wyatt and Slayton that need to play a lot more. I think Jonathan Ford is going to be in the conversation. Wouldn't shock me today, even as early on day 2, if they actually took a defensive lineman, maybe a Keanu Benton out of Wisconsin, Gervon Dexter out of Florida. I think both of those guys could potentially be in play. Adetomiwa Adebaware could potentially be in play. They could look somewhere there to add a little bit more depth to that room. I'm sure they're going to do their classic 7th round undrafted free agent lunch pill, full of dirt guys like your Tyler Lancasters and your who was the actual lunch pail or garbage pail full of dirt? I can't think of his name. Somebody help me out in the chat. Somebody, please. Why can I not think of his name? That's going to bother me. Whatever. Jack Heflin. Thank you, Dave MX6 Garcia. Yeah, Jack Heflin. I'm sure they're going to add a couple of those guys as rotational players. Matlock in the 7th round is a guy that I would very much keep an eye on. And I'm sure there's probably some undrafted guys as well. But yeah, the big guys that need to take a step there, Lowry and Reed. Like I said, Lucas Van Ness will play a little bit there in a rotation on pass rush downs as well, which is going to rest some of those guys. If you can put a couple of those guys, like you theoretically could, put a Justin Hollins and a Kingsley and Igbara on the edge with Lucas Van Ness and a Rashawn Gary rushing from the inside on an obvious passing down. Not saying that's your best lineup, but you could get away with that and do that and rest some of those defensive linemen. So that just makes a little less burden on the defensive lineman rotation. If you can get Kenny Clark and some of those guys some snaps off on some obvious pass rushing downs, it's going to save them for more, later in the season and certainly just throughout the season. You would be happy if we end up with who in the 2nd round? Thanks, Gerardo. Appreciate that. Jonathan Mingo, a guy I really have my sights on. I would love Luke Musgrave. I'd be freaking out if that happened. There's quite a bit of guys that I like in the 2nd round. I would love Jalen Hyatt. Like I said, I don't expect it to happen, but he would be a player that I would be on love. I really like Cedric Wilson. There's another guy I love. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen either because of his agility testing, but Adetomiwa Adebaware is a player that I love in this draft. This is an area of the draft where I think there's a lot of really, really strong talent and a lot of hidden gems. And I'm really excited to see what Goot's able to pull out with that pick 42 and pick 45. Edmundo, thanks so much. This is going to be a great draft for Green Bay this year. Go Pack Go. I hope you're right. They are due for an awesome draft. And I think they're off to a great start with Lucas Van Ness. Parody, thanks so much. The Packers draft a kicker tomorrow. It's in the realm of possibility. They like one, yes. They've got a bazillion 7th round picks. They don't need a bazillion more 7th round picks on this roster. Take a flyer on a kicker in the 7th round and see if he can ultimately be your next kicker. I'm all for that, Parody. All right. Any other big questions before we get out of here? Hope everyone enjoys the draft. Yeah, I think we'll start to wrap things up. I think Bryce Ford Wheaton was a guy that was on my my 25 list. Was he not? Yeah, he was at the bottom of my list. He's a good player. I think he's very much going to be in play 6th, 7th round for Green Bay. Another name to keep an eye on, probably more on day 3. Obviously, day 3 he's not going to go today, but he's a really fun player and one that hits everything that Green Bay looks for. All right. So yeah, I think that kind of does it for me today. As I mentioned yesterday, as soon as the picks are made, I'm probably going to wait today until both 2nd round picks are made. And then I'm going to put a quick 10, 15 minute video out on YouTube. So you can check that out. It'll also be up on the audio podcast. And then I'm going to do the same thing after the Packers 3rd round pick, assuming they pick in the 3rd round today, don't trade out or trade up or something like that. So as soon as those picks are made, you're going to see a video up on YouTube. Tomorrow, I am not going to do a pre-show, and I'm also not going to be doing anything pick by pick tomorrow. And I will do a live chat tomorrow as soon as the draft is over. Probably won't be right when the draft is over. Let's say the draft ends at, 3, whatever it is. We'll probably do it at like 4 p.m., something like that. But we'll be doing another live chat tomorrow. Like I said, I expect a couple special guests along with me tomorrow. So make sure to check that out. The same video that posts at, 5 a.m. Central Time, 365 days a year, have a new video up tomorrow, recapping day 2 and previewing day 3 and some guys to keep an eye on. So keep an eye out for that. But make sure to subscribe, like the chat here today. If you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the audio podcast, and just really, really appreciate all of your support. You guys have been beyond amazing. This is super fun. I think we almost hit 700 people in here simultaneously, 615 of you in here right now. So just really appreciate it. I love talking this stuff with you guys. There's going to be a lot to discuss over the next couple of days. And as mentioned, I'm going to be doing a massive deep dive I got a ton of notes already on Lucas Van Ness. We'll be doing a massive deep dive on every single one of these prospects, one day at a time. Green Bay's going to take like 12 players. So over the next couple of weeks, you can keep an eye out for that. So a lot of fun stuff coming up. Again, really appreciate you. Thank you for all the super chats today. For those who did that. So I couldn't get to everyone's question, but appreciate you nonetheless. I'll see you guys soon. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.